G'day legends, I hope that you're well. Now, have you got used to the face being completely shaven down yet? Because I really haven't. Every time I look in the mirror, I'm like, who's that bloke? And I don't like it. I don't know. I'm self-conscious about it. It covered me, but it's gone now. But legends, offensives are looming and propaganda is at an all-time high. And the cope trolls are in full force and more hypocritical than ever. But we'll have a look at some footage, we'll have a look at some maps and some major shifts on the maps as well. And we'll talk about President Xi and offensives too. So, speaking of offensives, Alexander Voshpo, who is a former US ambassador to Russia and now a senior NATO official, has said everything hinges on this counteroffensive. Everybody's hopeful, maybe over-optimistic, but it will determine whether there is going to be a decent outcome for the Ukrainians in terms of recovering territory on the battlefield and creating a much more significant leverage to get some kind of negotiated settlement. Now, I think this hints that Ukraine may attempt to take some land and then trade it back with Russia. So this really comes with the doubts that Ukraine has the actual military ability to take over all the areas that are currently occupied, such as Crimea and Donetsk. But they could potentially take ground within the Russian Federation and then trade it back. Now, that is pure, filthy speculation. As with the current restrictions, Ukraine cannot use any Western equipment inside Russia. But it's something that is worth thinking about and, starting to, sort of talk about as, these offensives will start, negotiations may begin down the track. But it's all over the place as we go. But let's not stuff around. Let's have a look at the maps as we zoom out here on the deep state map. So, of course, in the center, we've got Ukraine, the capital of Kiev. The red areas occupied by Russia since 22 and areas in the purple since 14, this being Crimea and Donetsk here. And around Ukraine, we've got Romania, Poland, Belarus, and Russia around here. So where we're going to go is we're going to have a look in on Bakhmut, as we have seen a major shift here in the past 24 hours. So today is the 26th and yesterday the 25th. So this is where the border is sitting now. Let's roll back till the 25th and we see a major shift. Now, we really see street by street sort of advancement from Wagner Group in this region, but we have seen a major push all the way up through multiple blocks, so to about here, leaving only a tiny sliver of Bakhmut city actually left in control of the Ukrainian forces. So this area here, which is grey zone, almost all of the remaining of the city, other than some blocks, is grey zone. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to watch some videos around Bakhmut. We're also going to watch, we're also going to compare this across separate maps as well. So we're on the ISW. Let's have a search for Bakhmut. And we'll zoom in on this and let's see what they're saying. And this isn't showing a similar picture really at all. So if we can see where these major roads are intersecting here, this is not showing similar. So this road, sort of this little ring road with the one through the middle. This is this one here with the one through the middle. That it is showing that they're almost all the way up into that region. So it's saying way down through here. Now, ISW is not showing that. This is why you need to take all maps with a grain of salt and compare across them. So let's look at the ISWs updated from yesterday's version of the map. So this was yesterday or the day before, actually, when I had the video. Now, not much has changed as far as the yellow claimed area, so it's looking fairly similar. But what has happened is the red has pushed up in this region here. This is today's, this is 2 days ago, to more assessed control. So it was only claimed, and now they've got assessed that they are in that region. So it is a funny thing. Now we're going to have a look at some updates and some other maps here as well. So what we're going to really talk about is the intelligence update. But something also which is, you need to take into account is I've had a look up and down the map and there's nowhere really else has shown much movement. And this goes in line with the other day that my video is being on, that Ukraine is currently in stagnant because they're waiting to go into an offensive posture. So they're not, trying to take back much ground currently. And Russia, other than in Bakhmut, is the same. So this is what the old intelligence update basically said. The only area Russia's trying an offensive action is Bakhmut. The rest, they're sort of going back into defensive. Now, let's see what this intel update here says. So Heavy short-range combat continues in the western districts of the contested Donetsk Oblast town of Bakhmut. A key development over the last week has been fighting on the outskirts of the town, especially near the village of Kromovy, as Ukraine seeks to maintain control of 0506 supply route. Now, let's have a look at this supply route. Let's go on the deep state because it's a little bit easier. So this Kromovy, and this is the supply route here. And as you can see, Russia has pushed almost all the way up onto this supply route. And we have some videos from near on this supply route. So this is from a Ukrainian source that is said to be on this 0506 route. Now, this video you will see some cuts in me talking as well, because this is a trench with Ukrainian soldiers in it, and there are bodies littered throughout this trench. But just have a look at the amount of mud, more than ankle deep, bloody halfway up your shin of just mud. And this is said to be from the last few days. You can hear the firing. Just look at the slush, and we're going to have to pause here as there is a body in front of us here. And I can't show you, of course, but the body is just covered in mud. People, walking over it past. This is the reality of war. This is how savage this becomes. Now, they've stepped over this body. You can hear on the right-hand side of this, there is a armoured vehicle. Ammo boxes in there, and these guys, these Ukrainian soldiers, forming up within this trench system. But you can just see how this trench is very shallow. These are, rudimentarily made trenches. Shovels still in here. And I guarantee as when the fighting's not there, they're still digging out to try and get some more cover from the artillery. Helmets on the ground, holes to jump into for artillery, and exposing yourself having to jump up out of these trenches. This is footage we haven't seen since the World Wars. Crazy. Just the balls to run up across something like this. This is where the trench warfare. I don't know if this is an ex-Russian trench, it's Ukrainian trench. I don't know who's actually in control of this, or who was in control and now breaching this. But just the situation on the ground here is just absolutely crazy. And I can't show you much in the middle there because there are a number of both Ukrainian and Russian soldiers who have sadly lost their lives in this region, and then they're going into this underground region here that is protection from the artillery. But bodies just littered throughout these trenches. Now, we're also going to have, while we're talking on this subject, we're going to look at two other maps and then another video as well. But let's finish off this intel update. So Ukraine's other supply options into Bakhmut are likely complicated by muddy conditions on unsurfaced tracks. The town having now been under attack for over 11 months, the Ukrainian Defence Forces of Bakhmut have now been integrated as one element of a much deeper defensive zone, which includes the town of Chasiv Yar to the west. So where are they actually talking about? So this is Chasiv Yar here, Bakhmut here, this is the road through Kromovy, but these other supply routes. Now, we both know that this road and the Vansky road are absolutely under fire control, and sometimes Russians have actually crossed the road, but there are some other routes in here, but that are almost impassable due to the mud. Now, let's have a look at War Mapper and see what they're saying of today. So this is the 23rd of April, and this is the 26th. So we can see some advancements, but nowhere near to the scale that Deep State is saying. So this is why we look at, multiple maps. So you can just see in the southern region on this map that Russia has made some ground, to the west. So Russia is definitely having advancements here, and probably a major step due to the VDV, the Russian paratroopers, taking up the flanks and freeing up Wagner Group in the center to make the assault. As we will see here, we'll see a commander of the 127th of the Ukrainian forces in Bakhmut talk about the flamethrowers being the TOS-1 Alpha, which are the systems which have apparently been handed over to the VDV.
Сьогодні 26 квітня. Ми знаходимося.
So Fortress Bakhmut.
Я Грищенко Роман, командир 127-ї.
They call it Fortress Bakhmut because it was Russia grinded away at it for this 11 months trying to get any ground. Now, the fortress is holding. I would say with the advancements day to day, there are areas which may be holding, maybe the flanks, but the centre is absolutely fluid.
Ворог застосовує
We have seen Russia using a lot of fighters. We've talked about this a lot with the FAB weapons as well, carrying these aviation bomb strikes, being from aircraft, which, you know, the Su-25 aircraft, I believe, as well as these widely using flamethrowers. So we spoke a little bit before how the flamethrower, the TOS-1 Alphas, were handed over to the VDV, and then the next day we saw TOS-1 Alpha, which is a thermobaric weapon, starting to be used in Bakhmut. So you could assume that the VDV are using those there. Now I'm just drawing those things together, but that's the way I would say.
бомбові удари, використовують широкий вогнемет. Наші герої, представники Сил оборони Бахмуту, виконують свої обов'язки добросовісно, якісно і утримують свої позиції.
Very difficult conditions for these men fighting here.
Подякувати всім громадянам України та всього світу за підтримку наших героїв. Щиро вам дякую від усіх моїх побратимів. Це неоціненний вклад в духовне підняття і
And we know that the situation there is really bad, that it is going from bad to worse day to day. And we have drone footage that's come out of Bakhmut on the 26th, so today or yesterday. I have to just mute this. And you can just see this, it looks like the moon. It just looks like a cratered moonscape of this once, you know, thriving little bumbling small city that has just been turned into basically just rubble. And we have more footage as well inside Bakhmut in the trenches from the Ukrainian forces. And as well, I'm going to have to cut out bits and pieces of this, as there are bodies just lying in the trenches in areas and war zones like this. We haven't seen fighting like this in Europe and conditions like this since 80 years ago. It's just unbelievable. Guys moving out across open ground. Areas with bodies on the ground, ripped apart by machine guns. Just horrible stuff. And you can just see these trenches being filled in from constant shelling. This guy on the ground in what looks like a crater hole and a Western machine gun in front of him. I'd call that a Minimi, but I think Americans call it an M240, like a 5.56 belt-fed machine gun. I could be wrong on the American translation there. You can just see how close that artillery shell hits, and just feeling in these trenches, and just the trees looking like something out of a movie. It looks fake. It's so bloody horrific, and it is a horrific situation all around. Now, we also have, 2 days ago I spoke of M113 AS4, what I believe was an Australian vehicle handed over to the Ukrainians, which is a M113 variant in Australia. And I asked if it was an Australian vehicle, and here in one of my groups, because I used to actually be one of the guys in the back of these, that we have actually seen this is a confirmed AS4 variant with the bins and this on the back as well, which I believe is why I said the other one was too, destroyed in Mariinka. Now, we know Mariinka is a source of much fighting as well. Now, the only other shift we did see was just to the north of Avdiivka. Ukraine did manage to push back some Russian area near this major road. So this was on the 25th, so right on the 24th as well. Russia then took a little bit on the 25th, and then Ukraine managed to stabilise the little bit off the front border there. Now, let's have a look at Avdiivka and see how this is looking compared to the Rybar Russian sources map. Now, I have had a quick look at these as well. So, these dotted lines here are, I believe, train lines. So if we zoom in on the deep state, you can just see the train line here, but you can more clearly see the train line here defined by sort of this greenery here, which I guess are tree lines beside the train line, which are in line with these. Now, if we look at the orange and red, which is the war grey zone, we'll call it on this, is very similar to where they're saying on the deep state map. So in the north, near Krasnohivka, just to the west of Krasnohivka. So Rybar saying a little bit further to the west, but the grey zone, the war zone, is fairly similar. So we have a look at this reservoir here that comes down to the south. Again, fairly similar, although deep state is actually showing more grey zone than war zone being shown then on the Rybar. Now, in Kamianka, we see here that they're saying that he's under control by the Russian forces, where Deep State is not showing that. But the war zone all around these reservoirs here, down past this major road, is very similar. Now, it is saying that there is a little bit more ground on the southern edge near Apotny, so the controlled area is very similar near Vodane and Apotny, but as far as the war zone, grey zone, is fairly similar again. So, the actual movements in the front line of this region haven't been too much. Now, something else we will talk about as well with some footage is this Ka-52 helicopter. Now, the Ka-52, this is a Ka-52, also known as the Alligator, which is an incredibly heavy armoured helicopter from the Russian aerospace forces. Now, these actually have an ejection seat. Now, this isn't the best quality photo, but you can actually see these like squiggly lines on the canopies. Now, what these do is these have explosives in the twin rotor. The reason they have opposing rotors is to reduce the need of a vertical tail, like stabilizer rotor, like a normal helicopter. But these rotors are rigged with explosives. The rotors blow off, and then these guys can then eject out. So it's one of the only helicopters I know with functioning ejection systems. We've actually seen these operated. Now, the armour in these is unbelievably thick. So I was actually wrong when I was talking about thickness, but Russian helicopters are incredibly heavily armoured. This is on an Mi-28 attack helicopter, and just look at the thickness of this armour here. It can withstand a lot of stuff. But they've also been greatly shot down in this war. We've seen a lot of downed attack helicopters, as well as a lot of people talking about how much the vibrations are bad inside of these and the lack of some of the guided weapon systems too. This video has come out of Potok. Now, what the hell is Potok? So we have Wagner Group PMC, who, if you listen to my channel, you'll be well aware of who Wagner is, owned by Yevgeny Prigozhin. Now, the Gazprom company, state-owned company in Russia, biggest company, they export all the gas, multi-billion-dollar company. They have, of course, a lot of state influence, but also have a lot, of reason that they want Russia to win the war and succeed, then export their gas again. It has been rumoured for a long time that they will start their own private military contract, and this is one of the first videos I've actually seen of Potok talking out and speaking about Wagner PMC. Now, this was translated from War Translated. So, 20th of April, appealing to you as personnel of Volunteer Battalion Potok, which is stream at the bottom, Nord Stream Gazprom. Well, formed in security of Gazprom, to look after Gazprom's interests, and the interest of Gazprom is then the state interest, as these PMCs can basically be hired guns by Putin and the Kremlin. The leadership of Gazprom has assured us we will sign a contract with the RF, Russian Forces Ministry of Defense. Now, Personnel will force a signed combat task contract. So they talk a lot too about the hate between them and Prigozhin's Wagner Group. So they've entered on the 3rd of April, so well under a month now. SMO being Special Military Operation. Now, Wagner PMC have abandoned positions, the contact line, and leadership by Potok took over their command. Armed Forces of Ukraine AFU.
Были потеряны 2 позиции в связи с плохим обеспечением боекомплектом, огневым прикрытием минометным огнем, безответственным отношением к выполнению своих обязанностей руководства батальона «Поток». Командование ЧВК «Вагнер», узнав об этой ситуации, в агрессивной форме с угрозами расправы над личным составом батальона «Поток», блокировал отход с линии боевого соприкосновения и запретил ротацию, не упускает личный состав в безопасную зону.
Now, things like this can be easily faked as well, but, this seems pretty legit. And then we see here, Yevgeny Prigozhin here. Now, Prigozhin has said before that, there would be absolute rift between his group and Potok, because, of course, he's a businessman. His business is Wagner PMC Group. They're hired guns. He wants to, continue getting that business.
Главная сегодняшняя проблема, которая существует с ЧВК в частности. Для того, чтобы каким-то образом разбавить ЧВК «Вагнер», для того, чтобы это не было одна большая сила, которая может сыграть какую-то роль на внутренней политике. Ну и первое, а второе, всем же говорится о том, что когда-то будет борьба за власть, всем нужно свою частную армию.
And here we go talking about that business, private money.
Они считают, что это офигенная тема сейчас собрать ЧВК. И поэтому начинают плодиться ЧВК, газпромовский поток, который мы голубой поток называем. Всякие ЧВК Бокарева, ЧВК...
And these are other PMCs, just not as large or as well funded as Wagner PMC or Potok.
Далее. Каждой твари попали.
And that's all we have of that. So it's an incredibly weird situation, and it is something that will continue to evolve. And I've got a video where I really break down how these PMCs operate, both Russian ones, but also Western ones. There's so many around the world, and how they can be used and be very, very cost effective for a country. And I'll try and link that below if I can remember while editing this video. Now, moving on to some more news. The Chinese President Xi and Zelensky have had a much-awaited phone call. Now, this was described as long and meaningful, although we don't know much more that was actually spoken about. So this comes after China's 12-point peace plan, which was really put forward earlier this year, and Xi's multiple-day trip to Moscow to meet with Putin only earlier this month. Now, as I said, we don't have any details of this, but Xi has told Zelensky negotiation is the only viable way out, and that there is no winner in a nuclear war. Also, all parties concerned should remain calm and restrained in dealing with the nuclear issue and truly look at the future and destiny of themselves and humanity as a whole and work together to manage the crisis. In a government statement reported by Chinese state TV, it said that China will send a special representative to Ukraine for talks about a possible political settlement. Now, Zelensky has also appointed Pavlo Rybikin, a former Minister of Strategic Industries, as Kiev's new ambassador to China. China has remained officially neutral in this conflict, but has not criticised Russia's actions, drawing some people to say, well, if you can't be neutral if you won't criticise Russia's actions. Neutrality in the time of oppression. So Russia's Foreign Ministry spokesman Maria Zakharova has said, we note the readiness of the Chinese side to make efforts to establish a negotiation process. Zelensky has written on Twitter, I had a long and meaningful phone call with President Xi Jinping. I believe this call, as well as the appointment of Ukraine's ambassador to China, will give a powerful impetus to the development of our bilateral relations. Now, China is wanting to negotiate a peace deal. Ukraine has made it very clear that there will be no negotiations on the table as long as Putin is in power and while Russia have an inch of Ukrainian lands being its pre-14 borders, including Crimea, Donetsk. Russia has said that they're willing for peace talks, but no one knows the exact conditions of this. China's peace deal proposal was met with heavy criticism as it did not include any guarantees for Ukrainian territory. Now, in my opinion, the real reason Zelensky really wanted to talk to China and develop these bilateral relations, it's not for trade or friendship. It's to try and build a relationship to stop China from being persuaded to eventually give Russia lethal aid. If China get involved on Russia's side in a lethal capacity, to the same degree that we have stepped in a lethal aid capacity to Ukraine, this war would step up significantly and draws into the war another global superpower, one that would be able to give Russia weapons, troops, everything for years and years to come, extending this war greatly and the bloodshed on both sides. Eventually, one side in this will have to compromise, and the goals of each state, they won't both be met. No one knows where this is going to go, but these offences in the coming weeks may give us a better idea. So, legends, I know it might be a long one again today, but look after yourselves. If you'd like to support me, there's links down below, but never ever feel obliged. Look after yourselves, have a great day, and I will speak to you tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.